That did it!
Miles, we need you.
It's still here.
In a year full of disappointments for me, like God of War Ragnarok, which was underwhelming, 28 years later, which I outright disliked, and me still working my shit job as I'm writing this, there was at least one thing that actually managed to cheer me up. Of course I'm talking about movies from Kazakhstan.
Да мы же даже рыбачить не умеем.
Научимся, у меня все есть, вон. Ё-моё, арма запарил, блин.
Oh, and Spider-Man 2. After finishing Miles Morales appropriately around Christmas time, it was now finally time to continue with the next chapter and the proper sequel, Spider-Man 2. Bigger, better and more fun, hopefully. And hopefully not too bloated and with weird story decisions that make no sense in the universe or what came before, or even in the story that is told in this part. And I can fortunately say Spider-Man 2 feels pretty much like a predecessor in tone to the previous two games. Slightly more dark and violent, but overall a pretty good sequel. A spectacular one, as the first game was already pretty amazing, and Miles Morales was a nice little spin-off that managed to be fun and a great little title that you can only blame for being a little bit too short. But hey, it's a spin-off, so that's fine, and I rather have a good time than a long time that I don't enjoy. And now, with Spider-Man 2, you are able to play as both Miles and Peter, and even some more characters in smaller capacity. You see, you can switch between both characters pretty freely during the game, even though the main missions and some of the side activities are only played by one of the characters. Pete and Miles also meet a lot of their respective rogues gallery: Scorpion, Black Cat, Sandman, Mr. Negative, and in the first half of the game mostly Kraven the Hunter, who is more violent and vicious than ever before, at least in the game as far as I can remember, and he is actually killing some characters. Even some I would have liked to fight and bring to justice, in a non-lethal way. Those he kills are mostly lower tier threats, but still cool characters that I like. Too bad, but hey, that makes Kraven here even more dangerous. I had to think of Amazing Spider-Man 2, the game, not the movie. I think in that one you also fight Kraven, who was pretty cool to fight with and had a nice little plotline there. But here it's even better made and more interesting. Putting him in the forefront, we learn a lot about him, and he was most likely so prominent in the game because of the kind of bad Kraven the Hunter movie that was released recently. I mean, probably bad, as I haven't seen it yet. But after a certain point that has kind of a shocking scene, we see another big threat, similar to the first Spider-Man, in which you first fight Mr. Negative and then Doc Ock. And here it's Venom. But they mix some things up, so that they are fresh and they take some turns that I didn't expect, and which I actually liked. Which almost feels rare this year, as there were other properties that took chances and missed pretty hard. They took some swings, trying to be different, and missed pretty hard in my opinion. Sure, it's overall still mostly played safe and not too unfamiliar, but what we have here is once again on such a high level of quality that it is just awesome. There's also a lot more story and the missions take longer than in the previous two games from what I recall. Which isn't bad, but I didn't think that some missions would take so long. I like the main missions though. There are also a lot of side missions and activities, but not so much that you get overwhelmed. It's actually a bit too little, I would say. It felt like at the halfway point I had already completed the overwhelming majority of side activities and their respective missions. I think the pacing with making side missions available throughout the game and later on was better handled in the first game. But that's only a nitpick. Sure, once Venom in his actual form is shown, there are a couple of hives that you can fight. Something that reminded me a lot of Web of Shadows, but also handled better here, even though you actually also fight the lower tier symbiotes and punch the symbiotes out of them. Weird, but I guess that's what happens and is now canon in Spider-Man, or at least in the games, as it happened twice already, at least. The animation and gameplay is also great for the most part, but I have a bit of an issue with the gameplay, but also not really. I know, but let me explain. Or at least try to explain. In the first game the fighting was mostly too easy in my opinion. You can perfectly dodge and parry in the game, get quickly into the rhythm, and fights were for me only a problem in the DLCs. When they were throwing so many enemies at you that it's hard to keep track of what's going on, and everyone is attacking at once, as there are so many enemies on screen. In Spider-Man 2 it feels like the controls are slightly less precise. I had a couple of times that I had evaded an attack but the action was not performed. But this time I also had problems with parrying. But that one was actually more my fault. I don't know, maybe it's just me getting old in general and not reacting that quickly anymore. But with the dodges I'm pretty sure I did dodge most of the time, but sometimes it just didn't register. I don't know, but overall it was still manageable, especially with all the gadgets that you get throughout the game. I did fight the camera more times than the enemies at some points though, which is unfortunate. What is a huge step up though are the boss enemies in my opinion. In the first game it was really easy to see the pattern during fights and just hit the enemy at the right points. In part 2 it's much more varied, how you fight the bosses, and they often change tactics, making the fights much more tense. There are also a couple of health bars that some enemies have, and once they switch into another health bar, they also switch tactics and get more aggressive and more dangerous. And this is what I expect from Insomniac games. After all the Ratchet & Clank games, especially the reboot, which had fantastic bosses. This time some gameplay elements have also changed. Miles and Pete have their own skill trees and a shared skill tree. There are probably 100 costumes when you count the variants and both characters. You can also upgrade gadgets with tech parts and tokens, and can switch some abilities for each character. The costumes themselves do mostly not have additional effects though, except for having some visual effects that you can change in the options menu whenever you want once you have bought the suit. In the previous games you were buying new suits and got some mods you can experiment with and swap around, but this time they changed it up a little bit and it's mostly cosmetic. Spider-Man 2 is also a great looking game, as was expected, but I was still pretty impressed. I also really like the story a lot, only for some side activities they kind of tease what is coming in the next game, I guess. I mean, just look at the flame. It's nice, but I would have liked to have a full story at some points for some plot lines in this game. And teasing who is really behind the flame, well, I really hoped there would be more, at least in this game. As I'm writing this, I have completed the story and most of the side activities. Only the spider bots are missing, but I will finish this soon and visit some places. Actually, now I have finished this. And the twist for the spider bots is quite nice. Some of the side activities and missions also lead to a bigger mission in the end, which is pretty cool, but it's not for every activity, which I guess is also fine. I have to say, overall this was great and might actually be the ultimate Spider-Man experience so far. I have only absolutely minimal issues with this game and liked it overall a lot, and I will give this game a perfect 10 out of 10.
A fate you will not share.
I've been in your shadow for hours, but you sense nothing. Pathetic.